Hi there, this is Brent Harris. Quick adjustment and we're good. So, good to see you again. What I'd like to do is I'd like to make a video for you that is going to bring together a few different subjects that I've been kind of speaking about here on my channel for the last little while, and that's come up a lot in my one-on-one practice. And it's a few different kind of subjects that I'm going to bring together into a mega theory, or at least a combination of the three. As they come together, I believe this will be important because it will allow us to learn a little bit more about the mechanics of actualizing our purpose. So there's a lot of us out there that are perpetually concerned about wasting time. So it's like, I'm always afraid, we'll, be spending a day at work or whatever, and we'll feel that unless we're being like super duper productive, that we're wasting time. There's always a fear of wasting time. And that also applies on a really macro level, like this fear of wasting your life. Like, oh my God, I'm afraid that I'm not doing my life properly. I'm afraid I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm barking up the wrong tree and wasting time. Ultimately, this commonly comes down to a fear of going about your life and never actually becoming that which you really can be, like never really blossoming fully as a person, never really offering up your gifts completely, a fear of getting to the end of life and being just about to die and being in regret for not having done enough or being risky enough or whatever. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to offer you a concept or a handful of concepts in this video that I think should hopefully make things a little bit more clear for you and should help you ideally feel rather empowered. And you should also feel an element of ease, like, okay, like I know what I'm doing and everything's kind of in control and I know how to go about this. So that's the ambition behind this video. I know it's a tall order, but I believe in you and I believe in me and I think we can make this happen. So here we go. So I'll kind of lay out the how this is going to go. So I want to start by touching on this subject of flow. Now, this one, if you go into my video history, you'll see I talk about this a lot because I've been lately just really captivated with this principle of being like when you're kind of in the zone of creation. I know you've experienced it, I've experienced it, and it's my belief that children are always in it, and we as children, we were always in it, when we're just like in a state of play and in a state of creativity and openness and a sense of fearlessness, especially regarding creation. So like, we're not, for example, afraid of criticism or doubt or judgment or, or failing or any of these types of fears. And when we're in a state like that, as we're going about things, then typically our best stuff comes as a result of it. And typically it forms, this will be a little weird, but it forms a portal through which new stuff, like the new shit, arrives. Like whenever somebody makes a joke or, could be even like something as small as a meme, or somebody says something, or maybe there's like maybe not necessarily a song, but a musical jamming session, and somebody will just channel something new. Where on one hand, all it is just a combination of images or words or sounds that are not new per se, but there's something about how it's put together and how it's presented that it's new, and there's this unprecedented quality about it. And to me, to be in flow as you're in creation is to channel new, kind of new things into the world, into the universe. So there's that. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit more. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit about what Eckhart Tolle was describing when he was talking about, when he was like kind of doing a lot of circuiting, a lot of traveling and talking about the now. And then I'm going to relate to you some kind of an extension of this theory of flow that was inspired by a video that I saw by Teal Swan, who is this speaker that I really admire. And I will link the video I'll link to her video in the description here. And if I don't, please help me remember. But first, sip of water. Okay. So just as a recap on flow, I've gone into great detail in other videos, and in this video I'm just gonna really boil it down. It is when you are in a state of engagement with some form of challenge, let's say. So it's when you're doing something. You could be at work, you could be creating some kind of art or craft, you could be hanging out with friends, you could be working on something, going on some kind of journey or adventure. You're kind of in the process of doing something. So this would exclude when you're like just kind of like, say, like taking stuff in. For example, if you're like just watching like Netflix or something, or or if you're relatively motionless, that would usually not be flow. But you're in flow when you're doing something and you're fully with it, you're fully engaged. You are paradoxically attempting to complete it, and you're like aimed at completing it or getting to the end or hitting the target, and yet at the same time you're perfectly poised and balanced every step of the way. So you're not rushed, you're not urgent, you're putting one foot in front of the other, and you're giving all of your attention to the phase that you're in, and you're allowing the thing to take as long as it needs to take. And there's a sense of play, and there's a sense of freedom, and there's a lack of concern. There is an utter lack of concern, about how it'll turn out, whether or not you'll succeed, how it'll appear to other people. There's a total lack of all of that, and you're just going right ahead with the thing. You can be in varying depths of flow, and it's sort of if you're doing something, say, over a period of time, you can concentrate, like you can get even more and more in alignment. People who tend to master things, like people who become chess masters or masters of painting or speaking masters, or whatever that art is, these are people who have just been in flow, and then they're so in flow that they go deeper into it, and then deeper into it, and then deeper into it, and they just keep they just keep merging and merging with their craft and getting more and more in tune with it. And that is the process of flow, just going ever deeper into something. Right, okay, so I mentioned that, and then the part where like new stuff comes. It's possible to be in flow over the course of your life. I found that every activity, if you're willing to engage with it, can yield flow. And what typically disallows flow is when we're doing something and we're kind of holding ourselves apart from it. So we're doing something that we believe we don't want to do. We feel like we should not be doing it. We think it's not good enough for us. We think there's something wrong with it. We hate it for some reason, whatever it is, and we're just trying to get to the end. That is when time slows down, and it just takes so long, and it's such a pain, and we're kind of suffering the whole way through. So that's flow. That's part one. Now, part two. Right. So part two is. So Eckhart Tolle, if you don't know him, I suggest that you do. He is a speaker, and he speaks on spirituality. He speaks on enlightenment, and he has a few different messages. But like one of his big staple books that he wrote was The Power of Now, and this is his his contribution to spirituality, and those of us who study spirituality and who study peace and who study wellness. And the book is about bringing attention to the now, which is it's difficult to speak about. It takes a certain finesse to speak about, not because it's complicated, but just the very, very opposite. It's so much like, it's so simple and so obvious, and so much like the glasses on your face, that it's difficult to talk about it because you're talking about everything when you're talking about the now. Nevertheless, for those of us who spend the majority of our times in our mind, what we're constantly doing is we're thinking about the future and all the different things that the future might bring to us. And we're thinking about the past, all sorts of things that happened in the past, things that, that did happen that we want to repeat, or things that should not have happened. And kind of furthermore, we're also kind of sometimes in a fantasy land that is in neither, but we're away from the here and now anyways. And so one of the big aims of his book, as far as I could tell, was to bring our attention into the here and now. When our attention is in the here and now, typically what we notice and what we become aware of is how incredibly still everything is. There's a quality about the now that, even though there's a lot of movement and a lot of commotion and a lot of, things happening all over, the now, by and large, is quiet and very still. You can notice it yourself, how there may be things that are moving or making noise in your midst right now. By and large, everything is still. Like if you look around, everything is still. So when he's talking about it, he would use this word that would just really capture my imagination. I really loved hearing him talk about it. He would call it an undercurrent. And so when he calls it an undercurrent, even though the now, the present moment, is relatively still, there's a quality about the now that flows and is flowing. It almost, in my imagination, I see it as a kaleidoscope. If you've ever looked into a kaleidoscope, it's a really interesting thing. And if perhaps you know what it is, but if you don't, it's like looking at a bunch of beads in a little glass with a lot of mirrors that kind of create patterns. And as you turn the kind of the filter on the kaleidoscope, the beads continue to shift around, and with the mirrors, it just creates new and new patterns. What's interesting is that you can never go back to any particular pattern that you saw before, because it's really random. The beads are just falling around in this particular filter. But nevertheless, as you continue to turn the kaleidoscope, you just get one gorgeous image after another. And that's a pretty good analogy for life, isn't it? Although we might argue about whether or not it's gorgeous a lot of the time, within the still, unmoving context of the now, everything is shifting and yielding and shifting and yielding, and something new comes from within something, and then something else comes from within that. Furthermore, it's not random. This is subject for debate. This is my channel. No, but really, it is subject for debate, but this is my perspective. This is my point of view on the matter, which is that it's not random. There's a flow behind it, and with that flow, there is an intelligence. There is a consciousness. There is a deliberate, there is a consciousness itself is deliberately invested and engaged in creation, and is constantly creating itself via this undercurrent of the now. The undercurrent of this now that flows is, interestingly enough, flows in the direction of the highest fulfillment of all creation. I'm laughing because that sounds really epic, but I think it's true. So I'll say it again, the universal undercurrent of the now, the universal flow, is flowing in such a way that it is delivering all of creation to its highest fulfillment. And you can see this viscerally, you can, or physically. You can see it when you observe like a seed planted for a flower or a tree or whatever. It's like, it's true that the conditions need to be put in place. It needs the water and the sunlight or whatever. But provided everything kind of, it gets its basic needs met, that which becomes a sprout, which becomes a sapling, which becomes a tree, which produces fruit later on, it naturally, just flowing according to its own according to the undercurrent, it moves effortlessly and easily and naturally towards its highest fulfillment. Even though it's growing up, and there's a resistance against gravity, like gravity is pulling it down, and yet a tree or a plant is pushing itself up. So there's strangely, paradoxically, an effort there. Like there is a push, there is an exertion of effort, and there's an accumulation and synthesis of resources and materials. And yet it's the most natural thing in the whole world for a plant to reach its highest potential and to blossom as a flower or to produce its fruit in the case of a fruit tree. And so the same thing is with humans. You inside of you have potential and gifts to offer to the world. You may have an idea of what they are, and you may not. But I believe you have at least an inkling of them. And so here's the rub. Here's where it gets kind of interesting. And here's where we get into part 3, where I was learning from Teal Swan's video about flow. Unlike trees and flowers and mountain ranges and oceans and galaxies, we as humans, we have an extra kind of thing. We have a thing that allows us, even though our full fulfillment is programmed into our lives, we have a choosing facility, or a faculty rather. We have a choosing faculty whereby we choose whether or not to go in alignment with our higher purpose or not. And therefore, it is our option to not be in alignment with our higher purpose. If we really wanted to, therefore, we could go about our lives without fulfilling our purpose. Now that's where it gets tricky, and that's where the rub is, because as I'm talking to you, I would just only assume that you do want to fulfill your highest purpose, and you do not want to lay on your deathbed and afraid of having not done it all. And so now we can get into this point where I believe I can kind of reassure you and kind of reassure you that you're on course and that all is well, because you very much are on course and all very much is well. To fulfill your purpose is to be in alignment with the universe. So in other words, to be on your purpose is to be in ease, is to be in the flow state, is to be in creativity. What happens, and this is what I got from Teal's video, along with other things, is that you'll notice that motivation and creativity, they come in waves. There will be spurts, there will be an inspiration, and it's kind of like being a surfer where it comes up, and when it comes up, you can get on your board and jump on the wave and you can ride it. And then the idea is to jump on and be with it and trust. And I think we'll speak a little bit about trust later, but to trust and to move all the way through into the completion of the wave and to not jump off early. This usually happens naturally unless we talk ourselves out of it. So we would need to be willing to act on these waves of inspiration as they come up, in spite of doubt and in spite of fear, or in spite of fear of ridicule, or a fear that perhaps this won't work out, or this won't go well, or any other reason not to. And even then, it's not exactly just accurate to say that, a wave comes along once in a while, because I think it's more accurate to say that your emotions and your physicality are it really bears reminding that we are very much a creation of the universe. We are a part of the universe, just like any tree that you'd see out in the forest. We're not separate from it. We are an organ of it, an extension of it, an aspect of it. And as a result, we are very much a part of that universal flow. We know what it is. We are a part of it. Our very existence is an extension of it. And it's like, when we get an inspiration or a motivation for something, it's like an extension of the extension. That's the nature of being a creative force in the universe. You are always being guided. And it's not like sometimes this is what I wanted to say, because I love the surfing of the wave analogy, but what's important to mention here is that there's never not a wave. It's not like you're just waiting for inspiration or whatever, because even right now as we speak, if you are just willing to just orient your attention inward and ask yourself a question such as, like, what do I want right now? What and not just the words, but to really to feel that question. Like, look at how I ask it. It's like, what do I want? What would feel good? What would feel right now? Extra points if you feel into your gut, where there's, if you'll forgive me, there's an actual umbilical style connection to the universe through the hara or the tantien. So if extra points if you get in touch with your gut and you go, what do I want? What would be good right now? What would be like just nice? What would feel right? And if you just ask that question and just wait for a second, then an answer will emerge. And what's really interesting is that it will usually guide you towards something that will boost your wellness. So it might be go for a walk, or it might be like sit down and meditate. It might be to sleep. It would usually be something that you deny yourself, something that you don't approve of. That you're like, oh no, I haven't been good enough. I haven't been productive enough to do this, so I can't do it. And it might even sometimes be something that is traditionally unhealthy, like I don't want to say anything that might get me in trouble, but use your imagination, something like that, where you can do any one of these things that are traditionally not good for your health, and you can easily overdo it. But sometimes in very, very small portions, it actually does a lot of good. It would actually be good for you. And so the key is to get in touch with yourself and with your connection to the universal flow. And you do that, first of all, by just knowing that you can. If you're listening to me now and you're kind of asking, well, how do I do it, Brent? Be careful with the how question, because to ask, how do I get in touch with the universal flow, would imply that you don't think you are. Be aware of any beliefs that you have in your psychology that you're not in touch with the universal flow. Nevertheless, just, for the how to, just ask, just be with yourself, just ask and trust whatever answers come. Go with your gut, as they say. All right, so if you get in tune with that, you ask, what would be good? What would be right now? And if you continue to do that, then you'll be in flow, and then you'll find like that sense of synchronicity coming back, where the wind is at your back, and the obstacles move out of the way, and everything feels right, and you're excited again, and you're kind of stoked to get out of bed, and you're stoked about life in general. Because man, nothing grinds up your gears and burns up your energy and friction and just like saps your strength and your mental and emotional strength than going against the flow. So why don't you and I make a commitment to stop going against the flow, or at least go less against the flow? How does that sound? So there we go. As promised, able to keep it under a healthy 30 minutes. the flow state, which is just being engaged and creative and not being against what you're doing, but just kind of focusing on it. Giving yourself to whatever is at hand, even if you feel like, you know, you're better than it, or it's not good enough for you, or I shouldn't be here. Fuck all that nonsense, right? You know, if you have a task and you don't like it, you're cleaning toilets or whatever, clean that goddamn toilet as good as you can. Learn how to get good at it. Get in flow with it. Make a game out of it somehow. I don't know. Just, you know, see how much shit you can scrub per minute, and then slowly increase the volume. I don't know, but engage with what you're doing. That's how flow is created. The undercurrent of the now. There is an undercurrent that is flowing all of creation towards its highest manifestation of its potential. And then 3, be with it. Like, get in touch with it in yourself. Surf the wave. Say yes to it and go with it right away. Move with the flow, not against it. And then you'll be on track to manifesting your higher potential. So let's all do that together. Marketing, please like this video, comment on it, tell me how sick it was, subscribe please. And if you want coaching so that I can work with you a little bit more personally on how to manifest your highest potential using all these principles and more, hit me up for a free consultation. I'm no longer giving away free coaching because I've been doing way too much for a long time. So now it's like consultations. If you're thinking about it, we can talk about it for free and kind of see if it's right for you. You can ask all of your questions. I can ask my questions. And if we want to move forward together, we can do that. Lovely. Take care, my friends. Goodbye.